Aircraft carriers were essentially miniature airfields at sea. The most challenging aerial operation to carry out was deck landings. In addition to being constantly in motion, the flight decks were also smaller than most airfields. Carrier pilots were thought of as elite aviators because carrier landings required a high level of skill due to the constant pitching and rolling. When the aircraft was malfunctioning or damaged in combat, performing this challenging maneuver was nerve-wracking. Landing with faulty landing gear was risky for the crew on the deck as well as the pilots. This aircraft's arrest hook is broken, so it must rely solely on its brakes to bring it to a stop. Sometimes the damaged aircraft were in such a state that it was a wonder that they made it to the carrier at all. Landings could be hampered by an injured pilot. The pilot in this case is semi-conscious and is fortunate to be alive. Due to low fuel or battle damage, these planes don't quite make it onto the flight deck. When an aircraft lands on fire or bursts into flames on landing, the deck crews face a challenging task. Being burned alive in a flaming aircraft is a pilot's worst nightmare. It also puts the deck crew in great danger as they frantically try to get the pilots out of the cockpit. Keep your eye on this man. He's only wearing a shirt, yet he runs to a flaming aircraft, which could explode in flames at any second. Unbelievable courage. His colleague is frantically trying to get the pilot out of the cockpit before it explodes. The deck crew's position on the rim beneath the flight deck did not guarantee their safety. Not even the cameraman was safe. Escaping aviation fuel could ignite at any second. If the crew members stationed on the ship's island believed they were secure, they were mistaken. There's an old pilot saying, "Any landing that you walk away from is a good landing." This pilot escapes without a scratch, even though his plane is completely destroyed. Since night landings were prohibited, pilots were not trained in night landing techniques. But the stress of war meant that in extreme circumstances, it became unavoidable. Accidents occurred frequently in these circumstances, despite aircraft carriers turning on their lights. It was reported that a pilot came within inches of landing his aircraft on the deck of a destroyer in 1944, such were the dangers of night operations. The safest course of action at times was to ditch the plane in the water close to the carrier and wait for help. By the time they returned to the carrier, their fuel tanks were usually empty, so the aircraft would typically float long enough for the pilots to exit. Pilot error was a major factor in the vast majority of accidents. Pilots would often drop the aircraft onto the decks from too high a height, damaging the undercarriage, or come in too fast. The installation of arresting cables on the flight deck and a tail hook on the aircraft allowed for safe landings. The plane could be brought to a complete stop by 3 or 4 steel cables that were spaced out across the deck. Aircraft would be brought to such a violent stop that equipment or ordnance would be yanked off the aircraft. This aircraft comes in at such high speed that the arista cable snaps his aircraft in half due to the high velocity of the aircraft. During World War II, large net barriers would be erected across the flight deck so aircraft that, for any reason, were not stopped by the arresting cables could be brought to a standstill, preventing a collision with parked aircraft on the forward parts of the deck or ditching overboard. This emergency system was called a barricade and worked by entangling the aircraft's wings or landing gear. As the war progressed, the engines became more powerful and the weight of the aircraft in general increased, placing more strain on the ship's safety equipment and crews. If the aircraft failed to come to a stop and continued over the edge of the aircraft carrier, some, as in this case, would have enough power to continue flying and go around for another try. But not every pilot was as fortunate. If you liked this video, there are many similar high-quality videos on my channel.